Hello, thanks for joining us at Drama Means. Today we're going to be talking about a 2023 Thai BL drama called Be My Favorite. Today, drama means time travel, drama means unexpected romance, drama means self-discovery.
So for those who haven't seen it, we thought we'd give you a little bit of a summary. Basically, 10 years after college, Kawi receives a wedding invitation from a girl he had a crush on. Her name's Pear, and he felt that his life took a downturn when he missed the opportunity to reveal to her his true feelings, and he's always regretted it. And when he comes across a magic crystal ball that allows him to travel back in time, he takes the opportunity to change his fate with Pear, prevent the fracturing of a valuable friendship, and even try to save his own father from dying. But things get turned on their head when he realizes that his love story might not be with Pear, but instead, he'll find love with her soon-to-be husband, Pisang.
So, I actually went into this drama not having very high expectations. First of all, throughout, I'm not going to get into Chris scandal and like all the controversy behind the actor per se, but I am going to say that after Sodas and the Chris and Singto pairing, as they started splitting and doing their own projects, I've kind of noticed like the acting like not being as good as it used to be.
For Chris
and Singto, Singto is a pairing with Chris during Sodas, which is like one of the big BLs that really shot GMMTV into like fame and like BL Thai drama fame.
Sodas was the one that Netflix picked up really early on, before Netflix was really picking up anything from Thailand. Like, they had just started dabbling in Korean dramas. We were seeing some K-dramas come out on Netflix in America, but Sodas was the big one that was made in Thailand that Netflix picked up and then went global with.
Yes. And so it also, Sodas, like, historically has basically created almost like a format in like later Thai BLs where it's taking place in, the universities. And being an engineer is like one of like the main kind of like in a lot of Thai BLs, a lot of the characters are in the engineering department, and they wear those cool like upperclassmen, like almost like a bowling shirt, like the form of it. But it's like basically people wear that emphasize, they're upperclassmen, the iconic burgundy of the Sodas, and that kind of has been a trend that took place. And now slowly things are going away from university, and like you're getting more like adult, like in the office space, or like, like working class BL rather than in university or high school. Singto and Chris had been, like one of the four pillars of GMMTV. And when Singto left, it became this whole thing where Chris is like, doesn't really have a pairing anymore. And he actually concentrated on a lot of like, just BG content, and where there's a male lead and a female lead. And so this is actually Chris' first BL drama after Singto left GMMTV.
And for those who don't really know and don't follow like the format of these types of dramas, it's a little bit different than it is here in America. With, if you're an actor, you get paired with another actor, and then that's your ship, and you guys end up doing all of their movies together and all of your series together, and it's like you are a couple, and some of them even behave like couples off camera to keep the kind of fantasy alive for the fans, and like you kind of stay in that pairing sometimes your whole career. So switching pairings kind of mid popularity is not the norm.
Yeah, and very rarely do you find another pairing where you're just as successful or even more successful. So I'm gonna gain a lot of haters, but especially with Singto, like everything that I've watched him after Sodus, his acting has gotten just a little bit worse than before. It's kind of, and that's my opinion. You know, a lot of people love him. He's super popular in Thailand. And so, but there was this whole thing like, oh wow, you know, Chris is going into another BL after, you know, Singto leaving GMMTV and after his controversies. And so when they announced this show, Be My Favorite, they actually casted another GMMTV actor, Mike. And the thing was, I remember when they released the first, like, teaser of it, it looked so comical. We knew this pairing didn't fit, right? And at the time, because of controversies, people, I think more international people were not happy with Chris, so they actually wanted Chris to be switched out and Mike to stay in the drama. But what happened was Mike was replaced with Fluke, and everyone was like pleading for this not to happen, or actually pleading for Fluke and Mike to be a couple instead of Fluke and Chris, which, in my opinion, I didn't really care. You know, like, and I was just like, okay, I may or may not watch this. But with the teaser of Chris and Mike, I actually was confused. I couldn't figure out what it was about. And I'm not sure at the time when they filmed the teaser, they knew what the story was. Then I kind of put it in the back of my mind, didn't really think about it. And then when they announced that they replaced Mike with Fluke, which they often do because they come up with these dramas and then they shoot a little quick teaser and then they're like, oh, next year we're gonna work on this project. So then there are often times when, like, scheduling wise, like, things don't work out. Like, I remember when they did the teaser of this also GMMTV drama called Mama Go Go. So they replaced Luke with Joss, and it's not necessarily like, oh, I don't think this actor is like a good fit, or maybe it is, or their scheduling is, you know, different, or they just don't see the chemistry. It's not really any kind of like dig on any person. It's just sometimes they change actors for that role.
Now, do they do that when they shoot a teaser? They're not necessarily shooting parts of what is ultimately going to be the show. They're shooting like, because like in America, a lot of times you shoot a pilot and you're shooting a pilot script, and that script is going to be the first episode of the show that's going to air on television. And sometimes a few days into shooting, you're like, oh no, we've done a horrible, I mean, the famous most recent, they shot this show for CBS called SEAL Team, and then they had Jim Caviezel as the lead. And about a week into shooting, everyone at the studio said, oh no, we've made a mistake. His tone is wrong, he's playing the characters wrong. The Navy SEALs on set were like, this is not how we behave. Like, this is not true to us. And so they made the decision to kind of stop production and reshot all those scenes with David Boreanaz, and then continued shooting the rest of the show with David Boreanaz, and he becomes the lead of the show, and the show gets picked up and is on television. But this teaser, is that actually part of the show, or is it literally just made to give the audience a here's what's coming?
It's just made to give the audience what's coming, but technically what is in it is supposed to be partial. Like, we're supposed to consider those scenes that will show up eventually in the drama. Well, we realize that a lot of times it doesn't show up.
So these teasers are almost like screen tests. Like, they're testing out the chemistry, they're writing scenes they hope to put on. It's kind of like when we write sides for an actor. If you want to cast an actor and you need extra time, and you can't wait for the script to be done in order to bring them to the actor, you just write, hey, write 4 scenes for this actor because we want to see if they can play this villainous aspect of this character. So you'll write a few scenes and you'll send them off to the casting director, and then that actor will do them, and then the actor comes to set, and the script is very different because we've had time in the writer's room to, like, change things. And they're like, oh, I really liked that scene that I had in those sides. And it's like, yeah, that was just made up to see if you could act.
Yeah, so the teaser isn't generally part of that. But what everyone, I know, like during that time, everyone was very upset with the pairing of Fluke and Chris. Fast forward to, now the show has aired, and their coupling has been very well received. And I really like the chemistry as well. And again, I went in with low expectations because I didn't feel that Chris' acting continued to improve. But after watching this, although in the beginning I did find that Chris kind of overplayed that whiny character a little bit, and I generally have a hard time with really whiny characters. But as the drama went on, he evened out a little bit more, and he was a little more natural with Fluke. That it definitely got a lot better. So as for the story of the drama, the concept is good, but it's not like a innovative concept. Like we've seen several other dramas with, like the going back in time and wanting to, change something in their past to make their future better. But I did like the way that they did it. I liked that there wasn't like so many things that he had to change. Like he had like 3 ultimate goals, and his 3 ultimate goals is to reconcile with a friend, confess his feelings for a girl he had a crush on in college, and also get his dad medical help in hopes that he survives his heart disease. It's not like going back in time to save the world or anything like that.
It's very personal stakes. It's very personal, like my life has taken a turn that I didn't anticipate, and I just want to do over with these main things. It's kind of that wish fulfillment of like you're at a point in your life and you're like, oh, if I could just go back and change these little things, it would make such a big difference.
Yeah. But I also like that when he goes back and he changes things, it's not necessarily for the better. So he goes back in time, and even though he's done everything right in terms of getting his dad medical help, but his dad was just meant to not be able to survive that time. I really like that aspect of it. I like the aspect of his, he mended his relationship with his friend, but also that friend ultimately becomes like a confidant to Pisang, which is like, I like that there's like someone there, especially when you're discovering something about yourself where you're not quite comfortable with and you need someone to talk to and you don't have anyone. This ultimately, he's kind of a stranger to Pisang, yet he's able to rely on Max and not, this is figuratively, but have a shoulder to lean on.
You're talking about Pisang with Max?
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. Because he's become a confidant. Like, he can talk to Max about, like, what it means to, like, find out that he's not interested in women. He's interested in men. Specifically, he's interested in Kawi. I'm sure, like, when you first discover something about yourself and you don't quite know how to accept it, having someone there to talk it through with is really important. And I love that it's Kawi's friend that's ultimately his support system.
So Kawi kind of goes back to fix his own friendship with Max, and Max ends up kind of like, well, he does succeed in that, but Max also becomes Pisang's confidant at the same time. So he ultimately gives them both a friend. He ends up giving them both a support system.
Yes.
I will say that the concept of this one is it's one of those concepts that's very easy to pitch, where you're like the kind of go back in time with the expectations to fix your love life with this woman, and then you fall in love with the woman's fiance. And also, obviously, now it's a coming out story, and it's a self identity story and a self-discovery story, but like it's just so easy to pitch that idea of, oh yeah, no, I'm in love with this woman, and if I could just have this woman, I could make my life better. And then you go back in time and you end up not ending up with the opposite, but ending up with something so different. It's a really nice turn.
Yeah.
And as a writer, it feels like there's a million ways you could go. You could go into really soapy love triangle type stories, or you can veer away from that, but there's so many different things you can do because the concept feels so strong.
I think I also like the fact that this doesn't have that like really messy love triangle where, you know, like they just start fighting for each other or like fighting. It's just, I'm kind of sick and tired of like everyone screaming at each other in certain shows, dramas, and this was like a really nice change. So ultimately, of course, Kawi doesn't end up with Pear, but I do like that at one point he changes and he goes back into the future to check it to see what things he changed in the past. And he did date Pear for a long time. And they were together for a long time. But ultimately, them dating didn't lead to happiness. It led to heartbreak. So he changed several things, like his work opportunity. He changed his relationship with Pear. And the thing was, both collided. So he became a singer, like a popular singer, where his life was always so busy. And even though he was dating Pear, he wasn't able to give Pear what she wanted, which was a happy relationship, home life, marriage, things like that. So that ultimately led him to realize that even if he did change it where he's dating Pear, that's not his happy ending.
Right. It's the happy ending that he thought he wanted. But that's the funny thing about like the happily ever after is because nothing is like happily ever after. If you were just like, that's why the movie ends. That's happily ever after for now. But then like life happens. And so like it's an interesting point to kind of go, oh, this is what I want. I got what I want. And but let me like see 10 years down the road, did it actually result in happiness?
Yeah.
So over the course of the show, does he go back and forth from future to past using the little crystal ball? And he's kind of like he's like checking on his work. He's like, let me go back and see if like the end result was good.
Yes, he does that. And the mystery man that ended up fixing his crystal ball so that he could travel back in time, that guy had told him, like, don't keep doing that. Like, at one point you're gonna use it all up. You're gonna use up your opportunities. So he really, like, at first he keeps going back and forth to check on his, like, if what he did worked. And then slowly he was just like very hesitant to do those things and was more careful in terms of like, and he honestly, for me also, if I had the opportunity to relive my life, I don't know if I would keep going back and forth. Like I would just keep enjoying the process of living the life. So ultimately, he realizes that his happiness does not lie within having a relationship with Pear. And also realizing that it's better to be friends with Pear than, in a romantic relationship. In the end, when Pear started having feelings for Kawi, and then she realizing that Kawi and Pisang had a romantic interest in each other, that she was upset about it, but also like very accepting of it. And that's why I was saying there's not really a love triangle between the three, because in each stage of it, it was something that like a character where they say, hey, I can't force something. I can't force someone to like me, which is very important because we see in so many dramas where like someone's rejected or someone realizes they're into somebody else, and then all of a sudden they do all these weird things that doesn't make sense and completely illogical to try to get that other person to like yourself, which is like...
Right, if you know someone's not into you, then you're like, but I'll make you be into me. It's such a weird, and maybe it's like, love and emotions aren't always the most logical place to exist. So like people do a lot of crazy stuff when they're in love or when they're chasing love or whatever. But also like to watch it, you're going, well, that's okay. So then you forced someone who didn't like you to like you. Like, how's that going to work out?
But also, most of the things that you do will literally make that person, like, not like you even more.
Yeah, because you have to be underhanded and conniving. So this is one that I did not watch. So I don't know all the details. But the one thing that, as we talk about it, I'm wondering about it. So he lived his life the first time as a straight man.
Yes.
And he gets to a point and he's miserable. He isn't happy in his career. He doesn't have a support system of friends and family. His dad's gone. This love of his life has been a missed opportunity. His life is kind of shit. And he goes back, and going back, he discovers, oh, I haven't been living my correct life. That's not who I am. And through his discovery, his like sexual discovery, or his preference discovery, whatever you want to call it, through that self-discovery, he becomes who he's supposed to be, which ultimately is going to lead to your happiness. And so it literally is kind of the thematic of living your true self rather than making assumptions about your true self. Like he didn't really examine who he was as a human, and life went really bad. And the fact that he went back and had time to kind of self-reflect and, oh wait, this is who I am. That in itself is what's going to lead to the happiness in life. Not necessarily I have to be with this person. I have to save my dad to be happy. I have to save my friendship to be happy. It's like, no, you have to live honestly through who you are to ultimately be happy.
The first time around, I also think that he was scared. So he was scared of coming out of his shell. He was reserved. He was easily embarrassed. He was easily deterred from living life as he wants to. And so that's why I think he was so miserable, was because he let outside influences influence himself into believing like, oh, I'm not good enough for this. I'm not allowed to live my life this way. So that is also why there are things that he wanted. He wanted friends. He wanted to sing. But it was very like, oh, they laughed at my singing. Now I'm not gonna sing anymore. I'm scared to, push the limits of talking to strangers. I can't afford to go out drinking with these new people. Things like that always stopped him from doing what he wanted to do. And ultimately stopped him from discovering what kind of person he truly is.
Yeah, so he got a second chance to basically learn who he is and be confident in who he is and what he wants, and not let outside forces, rain on your parade or influence your decisions, or, I mean, it's almost a story of confidence. You have to have the confidence to make choices in your own life. And once you gain that confidence, like, you can make the correct decisions because you're making them kind of at full speed and with the benefit of, belief in yourself rather than insecurity.
I also want to talk a little bit about how this drama itself doesn't have too many characters or too many like other side love lines. A lot of times I have issues when dramas have so many characters and you can only talk about each character's love line or problems within so many minutes in an episode. So it really takes you away from the main characters, right? And so and don't get me wrong, each person has their own goal. Like Max has his own goal of like spreading awareness of LGBTQ plus, and Pear like wants to be successful at what she does. And then also, I'm not really sure why, but this drama in general, at every ending, Pear finds someone to marry.
Okay.
So I don't actually think the character cares about marriage or relationship as much as the show is making it seem like it is. Because in the beginning, she, with her wedding invitation with Pisang, right? then when she was dating Kawi, their whole argument is that she wanted to marry Kawi, but Kawi can't give that to her because of his fame, popularity, time, things like that. And ends up being together with Not, which is like, if you had to find a villain within this drama, Not would be the villain. And so she ends up with Not during the time of when she was dating Kawi. So then at the end of the show, they attend her wedding to some other guy, this miscellaneous guy. So I don't necessarily think that that is her goal in life, considering how serious she was in like the whole student council thing, and like for me, she would be a career oriented person, and that's why they also showed there's a part where there was something very important to Kawi, where Kawi's father goes in for heart surgery, and everyone is supposed to be there. And the thing was, even though Pear was distracted and wanted to be there for Kawi, she ultimately chose like her student council like position. She chose the career path over the relationship with Kawi. That was also a nice parallel with her and how she felt about her mother, because her mother also chose like her dreams, her passion, which was art, over their family. She was upset with her mom that she left the family to pursue art, even though if that opportunity was given to her, she would have chosen the same path. I liked that parallel. So for me, I think it's weird that they chose marriage as such a big topic for her in every aspect of the timeline. Because in my opinion, her character is work oriented.
Does she become self-aware that she is basically like, does she have any forgiveness toward her mother?
She does forgive her mother after having a talk with her father. But she does end up apologizing to her mom.
Right, because so, I mean, at least in that case, like, her making these choices, she can at least self-reflect and go, oh, wait, the thing I hate about you is also the thing I am. And so I have to give you a little bit of a break because that's kind of who I am, too.
I'm not sure that was really her realization. But she definitely makes amends with her mom.
Do you think the reason that they made her end goal, even though it possibly isn't her actual end goal, but they made her end goal in the show, this marriage, is represent kind of norms, like, or represent like that kind of, work and family and kids and the kind of traditional, like, goals that people have, and that how our main characters decided, oh no, they would rather have each other than all these other goals outside of each other. And so her being married really has more to do with Pisang and Kawi's relationship than it does, like, it highlights what they have, rather, because like you started off this whole run by kind of, the show's less about side characters. The show is less about the people in the periphery of our main characters. It really is focused on these two people, and that's the priority of the show. So it feels like the other stuff is just kind of dressing in order to highlight their relationship, not so much to give us a very full and complete story or a complete character arc of any of the other two. Because even when you say Max, I mean, he's Kawi's friend and he's Pisang's confidant, his utility in the drama is really to support the main characters, not really to have, 100% well-rounded story for himself.
Yeah. Which I enjoy, because you feel happy for the characters when they get it, but we didn't have to be dragged through their 20 minutes of a story that ultimately doesn't really go anywhere.
Right. It's like just a way to take a pause on the other part of the show, which you want to get back to. And you're like, I think that's a problem sometimes in American dramas and things that I've worked on, of like, people really pushing you to draw out a lot from every single character. And so you start a show and you have like, you have your two main leads, and then you have your two supporting characters, and then two supporting characters becomes four supporting characters because those supporting characters need supporting characters. And before you know it, you're writing full character arcs for who? For the brother of the second male lead's cousin's nephew's brother-in-law. And you're like, what are we watching? And yeah, maybe it's comedy relief or something, but holy smokes, you've really kind of gone off track. How many episodes was this show?
12 episodes. I
think that tendency for shows to have to fill out the characters so deeply is almost a holdover from, like long form soap opera, or, in America, the network TV drama that were 22 episodes a year, and you have to keep the show going. It's very hard to do 24, or like some of these Chinese epic ones that are 40 or 50 episodes. It's really hard to do that many episodes when you only have 2 or 3 characters. So you have to build the worlds. And I think sometimes some of these smaller shows also feel the pressure of building out these worlds, and then you realize, well, I haven't spent any time with my main characters. Like, it's only 12 episodes. Give me what I want.
Yeah, it's funny. There's plenty of shows out there that are like 5, 6 episodes or 8 episodes, and then only like 15-minute long episodes, right? And a lot of fans complain like it's not enough. It needs to be longer, all that. But I feel like if the drama is done well and the story is written well, that is plenty of time for you to tell a complete story.
You can tell a complete story in 30 seconds. I mean, look at good commercials.
Yes.
Like, you can have an amazing commercial spot that you will remember your entire life, and you can tell an amazing story in 30 seconds. You think about music videos, a couple minutes with no dialogue, just with a song, how much drama you can tell. It has nothing to do with the time and the experience of just sitting in a movie theater for 3.5 hours. Like, I wish modern day movies would understand we don't need the movie to be 3 hours. Like, if it's good, a 90-minute movie is awesome. You get the entire experience and you don't have to waste your whole day doing it.
And so I feel like this drama, it's not giving you too much information, so to speak. This drama is very efficient in terms of their storytelling of the couple, their inclusion of the side characters without having to over dramatize their stories, and just in general the relationships between the characters and the 2 leads also, where like they ultimately have a support group.
So do you want to talk about some things that weren't so good about the drama, things that could maybe be improved?
Yeah, I'm gonna take this opportunity to complain a little bit. And it's not specifically this drama. I mean, although it is definitely in this drama. But a lot of these Thai BLs, GMMTV does it a lot. And I'm not even sure if it's just Thai BLs or Thai TV shows in general. But they use a lot of sound effects.
When you say sound effects...
like the boings and the doo-doo-doos and like, things that like they signify and tell the audience when it's time to laugh, when it's time to cry, when it's time to have certain feelings, right? But I think the audience are so much smarter than like what the studio thinks. The audience is going to know this part is funny and I'm just going to laugh. They don't need the dumb like sound effects or like little quick like sound or like music cues.
Wah, wah, wah.
Yeah, like dumb things like that, where it's just like, we don't need that. We're smart enough. We know when to laugh. We know when to cry. We know when to, like we know if they're sneaking into spy on somebody. We don't need a sound to tell us that. So it really upsets me that in 2023 that these studios still think that we need these musical cues or sound effects to tell us how to feel or react to a certain show.
I mean, it's the classic bad laugh track from the sitcom era. I mean, they still do laugh tracks in American sitcoms, and I remember, what was the Korean show that did like the goat? The goat, like, every time like something awkward would happen, and I was like, why is there a goat?
Yeah, that's the Reply 1994 and Reply
1988.
Yeah. And I think they even did it in Hospital Playlist as a like nod, because it was done by the same production team / director. They also added that in Hospital Playlist.
We do it now, even in American TV, and it's less now. We don't do the cheesy sound effects necessarily, because that we've kind of like moved past that part, but we're no better, because I mean, you go through a show, many of the shows I've worked on, and you'll go through a scene, and the notes you'll get from the studio or the network are, oh, can the music be sadder? Because they want to use the music in that scene to tell the audience how to feel. They don't trust the acting, and they don't trust the drama to come through unless, well, we need to have a happy cue here, otherwise the audience won't know that they're supposed to be happy. Oh, we need a suspenseful cue here, or the audience won't know that there's high tension. I think if you looked at some shows from a handful of years ago, we didn't use music as much as we use it now, and it is the insecurity of some studio folks that just don't trust the audience to understand anything unless you're holding their hand. And now you look at shows that I've been a part of, and there's music in every single scene. Like, these composers are composing score in every scene. No scene is dry. No scene just plays with the ambience and the actors. And it drives me nuts too, because sometimes music helps. Music does help. The sound effects are hacky, and I think they suck. But like, good music really can accentuate a story. But sometimes, like, that slow creep, you think about that horror movie creep, is so much better in a quiet room. It's so creepy and tense, as long as you trust the audience to understand that they're watching the television and they understand what they're watching. But then, no, you dun 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 dun. It's like, yeah, I know the Jaws thing, it works, but you don't have to use it every time.
Yeah. Yeah, so even like some of my favorite ones have, especially in the beginning of the drama, like it's kind of fades a little bit, and I don't know if it actually fades and disappears more towards the end of the show, or like from the middle to the end, or I get so used to it. It's like when you walk into a stinky room and then you smell the stink at first, and then if you're just in the room for a while, you just kind of stop smelling it,
and then someone else has to walk in and go, oh, it stinks in here.
Yeah. And so it's the same thing. It's like you first start watching the show and you're like, oh, these sound effects are so distracting, and it's just like taking away from important moments in the show. And then after a while, you think that they've kind of disappeared, and I don't know if it's really disappeared or I've just gotten used to it.
And there is time and a place for, I mean, like, there is some sitcoms like need that laugh track. You need to feel like you're in an audience, like laughing along. And like those, even like the variety shows, a lot of like I would say variety shows from every country, like even the UK kind of panel shows will use sound effects in their games and stuff. And it's like, okay, in that context, it works. It's funny, it's jokey, it's hacky. That's the tone of the show. But sometimes it's just like, leave that stuff alone.
Yeah. So yes, that's me complaining. I do think the cinematography could be better in this show. I think it definitely would deserve it. It's a good enough story-wise and quality-wise. I would like a little bit like better lighting, things that wouldn't be so overlit. But for the most part, it's actually already better than some of the other Thai BL shows in terms of like production value. But yeah, I kind of want it more because it's a good show, and I want all the best for it.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's really hard because cinematography so depends on how much time you have to shoot. Like, features look so good because you can spend all day shooting 2 pages of the film, and the cinematographer gets hours to light it, or they can wait for the sun to be in the perfect place in that magic hour glow. And then you go to TV where we're shooting 8 pages a day, and it just doesn't look as good, and it's still very professional, it's very polished, but like you can start to tell the difference. And then you move further along the line where you just have so little time to shoot anything that you just throw a light in the actor's face and turn it on, and it looks like news coverage because it's just a top light on top of a camera, and then you point it and, hey, we can see it, let's go, next scene. So that's really unfortunate sometimes that the shows don't have the budgets to be able to spend the time, because I don't think it's a lack of talent. Like, I think you look anywhere now in the world, the technology is so accessible and so good, and the technicians, I've shot in so many countries, and I've never been to a place where there wasn't a lack of talented people. I mean, where there was a lack of talented people. I said that completely wrong. Everywhere we've gone, no matter what country, the crews are so talented and so good at their jobs and professional. It's just they don't always get the time to spend on it to make it look polished and professional.
Okay. I know I've already mentioned, like, the whiny, well, Chris being whiny. I don't necessarily think that his character is a whiny character, but I feel like Chris played it that way. Mainly in the beginning, but he did level out towards the middle, and then well, I think once the chemistry really struck with the two, he kind of got more comfortable and he became less whiny. But he is a little bit and I feel like he can do better because I've seen him do better, but sometimes he just goes a little bit over the top.
Well, it sounded like story-wise you liked the concept.
I liked the concept. I don't understand why. I think the other, like, Knott's character, which I said before, if you had to find a villain within the story, Knott would be it, even though he's not really, because he's just kind of an annoying asshole. Like, you know, like, he bullied people. He always made everything about himself, and if he wasn't in the limelight, then he would bully whoever was in the limelight. And it was just it's just that annoying character. He didn't even do any real damage to anybody, which is nice, other than he pined over Pear, but there was another girl, which I can't remember her name now, that she really was into Knott, and it was that kind of love triangle, but not really serious love triangle. But other than that story, you know, like, he was a decent guy to hate in the story, because you didn't really hate anybody in the story other than him, I think.
Right, he served his purpose.
Yeah, for sure. But that was it. I think his character could have been written a little better. But also, I don't want to say that and be like, people would think like, oh, let's make him more annoying, because that wouldn't be better. But yeah. Other than that, everything was just really like, you would almost consider this a slice of life, because you're just kind of going with the characters and living their life, even though they have like the whole time travel aspect of it. It was just kind of a nice little easy ride throughout the drama. Really,
it's not that the time travel is used to accentuate the character piece-ness of it. It wasn't a sci-fi show. The time travel is just the tool they could use to let him kind of relive these pieces, and it was really a character study.
So I specifically want to talk about this moment in the drama, which is really, part of me at first was like, what else is there to talk about? Like, why is there an extra episode that we could have cut out? Because they're together. They got their happily ever after, you know? And I love that, like, I don't know if this is like a theme in where like happy ever after isn't necessarily happy ever after, but the moment where like Pisang winds up that crystal ball, and at first they don't show you know, that like anything happens, so you think, oh, only Kawi winding it will do anything, you know. And so then they go on with their relationship, and they're dating, and they're loving each other, and then like it shows you like, you know, a montage of them like 10 10 years goes by, or maybe 20 years goes by. I can't remember how long of a period of time, to the point where like they're such like an old married couple that and they, there are moments when they're so in love with each other, and there are moments where like they don't even see each other because they're both so busy doing what they're doing. But then it ends up to a point where Kawi gets super sick and is in ICU in the hospital, and Pisang doesn't even get to go see him. And he's so at a loss that he goes and winds up that crystal ball again, and then he shows up exactly at that moment in the beginning when they're first dating. He wound up that magic crystal ball, and he's at that moment. He has the option of changing where he could possibly save Kawi's life. Somehow Kawi gets, this seems like a deja vu, and he talks to Pisang, and Pisang comes clean and was like basically telling Kawi like what is happening in the future, and Kawi's like, if I'm meant to go, I'm meant to go. Like, you can't change things, but do you want to change things? And Pisang's like, am I selfish for not wanting to change things? Because the last 10, 20 years has been so amazing to them that he doesn't want to change anything, and he wants to have that love that they've, shared for so many years. And that to me is like so poignant, and it's just like, and it's such a good touch on this whole going back in time and changing things. Like, you don't have to change things because you've lived a pretty fucking good life. That little sour moment, it's not worth changing all the good times for.
Right, and maybe it's a little bit about Kawi's growth as a character too, of going, well, I'm different now. I'm not looking in my past anymore regretting all of these things. I'm looking in my past and it's beautiful. And I don't want to give any of that up just because the future's in jeopardy. Because that's what you're doing when you go back and change the past. You're looking backward and you're changing the future. And so he's saying, well, I don't want to lose all of those things we had, all of that I gained, just in order to preserve 10 years without you, or whatever it is. It's definitely a character growth on both of their parts.
Yeah. And I think just that ending alone really is worth watching the whole show. And the whole show is very good, and I know a lot of people were against watching the show, against the pairing, against Chris, but I always say, like, let's just watch for the characters and the story, and not judge everything off of the actor or, like, their personal background, in real life, or their scandals, their whatever it is. Like, let's just enjoy the show, enjoy the story, enjoy the acting, enjoy the chemistry.
Yeah, I find some people come into so many things with like preconceived notions of whether I'm going to hate it or love it, and can't get past that. Like, oh, this actor, I hate this actor because of some tabloid thing or some other show they were in, and I can't see past that, so it's just going to be bad, and then you hate watch it. And you're like, well, let's, like, I don't know, you always have to give it an episode or two and like, okay, let me hate it or like it for the content that it is, not for the preconceived notions and the baggage that you've brought as a viewer.
Yeah. But of course, we can't change your views. So if you are adamant about not watching it, that's totally fine. I think the actors are doing well, and the show is actually doing well.
So a lot of people, the tone at the beginning was these two shouldn't be paired up. This is going to be a disaster. And the outcome has kind of been not that. The outcome's been pretty well received.
Yeah. So I definitely recommend the show. For me, this ranking, it's kind of an in-between. For me, it's actually in between Around the World in 80 Days and A Drink on the Pool Deck. So it's...
Well, you have to pick one, though. You can only have one ranking. You can't do Drinks on a Pool Deck point 8 Around the World in 80 Days. There's no points. There's no 9.5.
Okay. Well, that's really the case. and I'm not allowed to be in the middle, I guess I would probably go with Drinks on a Pool Deck.
So very, very, very,
very
good.
high. Yes, very, very high. But yeah, so that's my ranking.
I will not be ranking this one. I did not see it. It sounds super interesting. I mean, I think from the concept and it sounds like the chemistry between the characters, and it felt like from hearing you talk about it that the directors and the filmmakers and the writers took the time to extract all the drama. You know, when you have limited time and resources, using them efficiently, I really appreciate, because nothing worse than putting something together and you're like, I want to tell this epically long story, and you're like, well, you don't have the budget or time or actors or anything that can pull that off. So tell a story you can pull off with the resources you've been given. And it really sounds like they did a good job of doing that.
Yeah. This was one of those dramas where, like, I waited for the new episode every Friday, and it was like me wake up and the first thing I do is watch the episode, and then I get on with my day.
I mean, that's a good sign.
Yeah. So I definitely recommend this.
What platform is this one on?
This I watched on YouTube. I believe it was airing on View. That's VIU. But GMM TV, at least I think for the United States, they have their channel where most of their content, even if they were supposed to be on like Disney Plus Hotstar or View, we're still able to watch it on their YouTube channel.
So if you want to watch it, you can check it out there or one of those other platforms. And luckily for everyone listening, it's already all out, so you don't have to wait till Friday morning, first thing in the morning, to watch it.
Yes.
So now comes the part of the show where we maybe give you a little bit of a recommendation, something that's maybe similar in genre to Be My Favorite, which is a Japanese anime from 2016 called Erased. Has a lot of the same themes as far as wanting to change your past, going back in time, going back and forth and figuring out how it affect your future and stuff like that. Erased was amazing. It is about a guy in the future, well, it's in his present, and he kind of has these premonitions where he can kind of feel something is about to go wrong. And then he goes back like 5 minutes in time and he has to figure out, wait, why am I reliving this 5 minutes? What's wrong? And he's able to kind of change the future in a small way until one day his mother is murdered. And it throws him for a complete loop. I mean, his mom is his kind of confidant, his best friend. She's everything to him. And we start to get the feeling that it might be connected to something in his past. And he ends up, instead of just warping back 5 minutes, he ends up warping all the way back to grade school. And realizes that somehow, some way, his mother's murder is tied to the disappearance of this young girl he went to school with that he'd completely forgotten about, basically. And he has to figure out what happened to this young girl in order to figure out what happened to his mom, or to prevent the murder from happening in the first place. And it's phenomenally done. It's 13 episodes. It's very exciting. It's well voice acted. It's available on Netflix and Crunchyroll. Highly, highly recommended. What I do not recommend is the live action version of Erased. I feel like they took the charm and the magic and everything that was good about the anime and just stripped it out and made a live action version that was basically unwatchable. I think there were a couple of good episodes, but for the most part, it was just, I just don't know how you screw it up that bad. I don't know how you take something as good as Erased was as an anime and then decide, you know what, all the good stuff? Nah. We're going to just do all this other stuff just for the sake of changing it? I have no idea. It was dreadfully bad. But check out the anime. It's really, really good. And also, check out Be My Favorite. And that does it for this episode of the Drama Means podcast. We thank you so much for listening. Please join us again next week on Thursday when we talk about the epic Chinese costume drama, The Blood of Youth.